Hey Shalloners, welcome back. So I wanted to do a follow-up video to one I just put up about the Khloe, Jordan, Tristan, Kylie, Kardashian fiasco, right? Because how could we not talk about that? So definitely go check that out if you haven't seen it. But in that video, I touched on Khloe and her victim narrative, that my thesis for that video is basically, I feel the least sorry for Khloe because she should have seen this coming. Tristan has always been a cheater. Every guy she dates is a cheater, and she just keeps doing it. And for someone who has literally as her Instagram bio, I crave a love so deep the ocean would be jealous. I'm getting retarded tingles, and you're just douche chills. For someone who ostensibly says all she wants out of life is love, she goes for people who make that impossible. Why? And you guys really talked about that a lot in the comments section. You're like, wait. Tell me more about this victim narrative thing. So I thought, all right, let's do a whole video on this. And actually, let's do a whole video on all the Kardashian and Jenner men, and why these girls choose the guys they do. Because each of these guys that they choose are fucked up in their own way. Why? You have everything. Every guy wants you, and you go for such toxic people. We'll explore it because I got the answer. But first, I just want to let you guys know, if you're new or a returning visitor, if you want to contact me on your own and chit chat privately, because that is something I offer, unlike Matthew Hussey or Hussey, whatever you'd say his name. Blech. I let you guys get in touch with me and we can talk completely privately about your issue. Find me on the Instant Go app. My username is ShallonXO. If Instant Go isn't available in your country just yet, you can leave your comment as a question. Your question is a comment right here on this video in the comment section for the best chance of it getting answered. And also find me on social media at ShallonXO on Twitter, Insta, and Snapchat. And new videos every Friday. It's amazing. So yes, the Kardashians. Okay, let's start with Khloe first, right? Because we've been talking about her. So yeah, this victim narrative. It's important to realize that we all have a narrative. We all have sort of our own personal mythology that's playing out all the time. For example, if you had a parent who was always telling you that you were lazy, that tape loop continues in your mind for the rest of your life. I mean, you can stop it. You can change any of these things with therapy, with self-awareness, with behavioral cognitive therapy. But you have to try. It's like if your parents fed you and they made you fat, you're not just going to wake up one day and be thin. You're going to have to try to overcome those patterns, right? So say your mom always told you you were lazy. You're going to live that truth because the brain wants to be right. The brain wants to say, I knew it, and it makes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Say you're walking down slippery stairs in heels and you're like, I'm going to fall. I know I'm going to slip. Chances are you slip because the brain doesn't want to think that it's crazy. So it engineers these things to happen. What you fear, you create. And it's fucked up, but it's true. So if you're like, oh, my mom said I was lazy, you're going to get into relationships or situations or jobs or friendships that check that scratch that psychological itch. You're like, I knew it. When you scratch yourself so hard it hurts, that's what this is, only behaviorally. So Khloe's narrative is that she was the victim. She talks about this constantly. She has monetized this narrative. Revenge body. Look at who I am now. I'm not like my sisters. It's her thing. And I'm not saying that it's not true. No. She was the ugly duckling, but she was never really a victim. In so many ways, we're all victims in our own life, right? We're all the martyr. We're both the hero and the villain of our own story. We're the princess in the tower and we're the knight in shining armor, depending on what story we want to sell to somebody. What's convenient, what's itchy, what's scratchy and itchy. And Khloe's is overwhelmingly victim-based. That is where she feels comfortable. Because one of you guys said in the comments, you're like, why would anyone choose that as their narrative? And that's the thing. You don't choose. This is something that's not hardwired into you because that's nature versus nurture. But this is a message that someone has given you, in Khloe's case, the public, herself. And most importantly, you have gotten an emotional payout from. There is something about this narrative that works for you. So how does it work for Khloe? What is the positivity she gets out of there? Well, like I said, she's managed to monetize this, right? She had a whole TV show catering to other people who felt like victims in their own life. That's a pretty good payout. She also gets attention. You know, like she loves attention. When you feel like you are the ugly duckling of your family, attention is your currency. You want it, you need it. And it's like positive or negative kind of doesn't matter. If it's positive and everyone loves you, that validates this victim narrative because you're like, see, I'm connecting with people through this. And if people hate you for it, the victim narrative provides like a cushion. It's like, well, they're not rejecting me. They're rejecting my narrative. They don't really know me. They just know this story that this persona that I've chosen to be. And all of this happens like unconsciously. You know, there's not some big like whiteboard in our house, like, you know, like executing like phase the first. Like all of this that we do in our own lives, that they do in their lives is just, it just comes so naturally unless we stop, become aware, and take steps to change it. Like bad eating. So Khloe's victim narrative. Obviously, she's going to go for dudes that satisfy that. So she's going to go for guys with sort of like a built-in expiration date. You know, they're a dead end. Lamar, he was a crackhead before he met her. If a guy said to me on date number 1 or 2 or 500, hey, I used to be a crackhead, that's a deal breaker for me. Maybe it's not for you. Great, someone's got to date him. It's not going to be me. And I don't think it should have been Khloe because she's too codependent. Her identity and her worth is tied into who she's dating, what relationship she's in, and also how that person is rejecting her. Because remember, that's a key part of her internal narrative, the rejection. That has to happen. It has to be the super high, the highs, but then it has to be the lows to satisfy that tape loop in her mind and complete the story. So she's going to go for guys that make that happen so she doesn't think she's crazy. So much money, so little therapy. It's just fucking wild. It's wild. And we can overcome our tape loops, but it's hard. So how can we take this advice into our own life? And I'll get to the rest of the Kardashian sisters, but first I want to let you know how this can be applied to your life so that you can be thinking about it for the rest of the video. So like we all have our narrative, right? But it's very, very hard to self-diagnose. It's really, we just simply don't have that perspective and that objectivity about our own life to be like, I'm the martyr. Like, and usually if it's something negative, which very frequently it can be, we're not gonna be like, that's me, you know? Nobody wants to see themselves as the villain of their own story. So ask people in your life and don't go into it defensively and don't be mad at them if they give you an answer you don't want to hear. But be like, hey, what do you think my like narrative is? Give Khloe as an example and give the rest of these girls. Be like, what do you think? I'll tell you what mine is because there's a sister who matches it. Ooh, which one? Who can it be? But let's keep moving. Let's talk about some more sisters. Let's talk about Kim. Kim's narrative and Kim's currency is adoration. Kim needs to be adored. She's a narcissist. I kind of am too, you know, so it's like, I get you, Kimmy. So when you look at her through that filter, it's like she needs to be adored. Her relationship with Kanye makes a lot more sense, right? And her divorce from Kris Humphries also makes complete sense because he didn't adore her. No, he was calling her out, giving her truth, bitching back at her. And that's why like audiences loved him because they're like, oh, he's speaking the truth. Like no one's going to care about you in Minnesota. And she's like, you know, she did not like that. And that wasn't working for her. And she got herself out of that. She could dress up that divorce as whatever she wants. That's really what it boils down to. She wasn't being adored. And guess who does adore her? Kanye. He's crazy. But she puts up with it because she is his muse. He is obsessed with her. And he has been obsessed with her for decades. And that is also something she needs. She needs to be this Elizabeth Taylor type idol worship figure. And Kanye gives that to her. Therefore, she's willing to put up with the fact that he is mentally ill and unmedicated. So we got a crackhead. We got a mentally ill man. Cool. You know, but again, there's itches being scratched. And that, to the psyche, is the most important thing. People don't date logically. Because if you ask everyone on planet Earth what it is they want out of a partner, everyone says the same thing. No one's like a crackhead with issues. Like everyone's like someone who's thoughtful and warm and smart and supportive and blah, 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 blah. And yet you see people pair up and you're like that's definitely not what's going on here. And that's because people date with their complexes, not necessarily with their head and their logic, and sometimes not even with their heart. You know, it's that insecure, it's the void within that you are trying to fill. If you aren't a whole person, if you haven't done the work to be aware of these things, you get caught in that trap real easy. So Kim needs to be adored. What about Kourtney? And I think it's easy to look at Kourtney and be like, I don't really see any problem. She's like a bad bitch, you know, like she just like takes names, dates younger men, does what she wants. This is true. And in that sense, her relationship with Scott made perfect sense to me, because what Kourtney wants is power and control. So being with someone like Scott for so long, who was like cheating and running around and was an alcoholic, that in essence gave Kourtney the license to do whatever she wanted, because basically they had a parent-child dynamic, and a parent gets to do whatever they want. The child isn't calling the shots. So because they set up that parent-child dynamic, she was able to do whatever, and Scott couldn't say shit about it. So what is she going to take the kids to like Paris for 3 weeks? What's he going to say? Nothing. He's a bad dad. He's a drunk and a partier and a cokehead, you know? So like, she liked that he was such a degenerate because that gave her this moral high ground. And when she had that, that means whatever she did was going to pale in comparison to whatever he is doing. Right? So you're like, oh, okay. Now that they finally separated, now that she's got what she wants out of him, ostensibly, I think it's children, you know, and she's just ready for something different, who does she date? Younger guys. Also a high element of control there. And guess who I'm like? I don't like to think of myself this way, but my mom pointed out, she's like, you're the boss in the relationship. I'm like, oh, I feel attacked. And she's like, you are, because we were having a conversation. I got invited on a last minute trip to the Cayman Islands over Valentine's Day. And she's like, my boyfriend's name is Max. She's like, isn't Max going to be mad? And I'm like, oh, he'll get over it. And she's like, you're not even going to like discuss it with him? And I'm like, why would I discuss it with him? It's like, it's my life. It's my deal. She's like, because you're in a relationship for 1.5 years and you discuss things with your partner. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you know, that was very indicative of the dynamic. Like, you don't disrespect him and you love him and he's an alpha just like you are, but you're going to do what you want to do and no one's going to get in your way. And you're not going to be with someone who like tries to guilt you or control you or, you know, smother you. Like, that is not going to work for you. She's like, honestly, I think this is the healthiest dynamic I've seen play out given your control issues. Like, this is, you guys are a good match because you both want to do your own thing and you give each other space and not the evil eye. So that's great. But my boyfriend is also a lot younger. He's like a decade younger. So in that sense, like, I totally get where Kourtney is coming from. Like, it's not like, again, these aren't like malicious intentions. They're certainly not conscious, but it's like, this is just what you've been gravitationally pulled towards. And with Kourtney, she's the oldest. She's used to bossing around her little sisters. She's used to kind of being the de facto parent. This dynamic works for her. Because like I was saying, people don't stay in something that doesn't work. They don't. And that's the wildest part, is we have to redefine what working means. Because yeah, you look at someone like Khloe or someone like Kim. Kim's a good example because like on paper, they're married, they have kids, you know, they go to things together, they seem to like each other, but he's a fucking nightmare. Like, can you imagine being married to someone that unhinged? He looks like he smells bad too. Do you know what I mean? He's not even hot. You can find a lot of crazy hot people out there. I'm one of them. So it's like, how is that actually working? But remember the itch, the scratch. It works when you view it through that filter, not through the work. Like, it's working when you look at it through the eyes of like a therapist. Like, this is a healthy, mutual, balanced, neutral relationship. When you look at it through a filter of a scratch, all these relationships are working. So what about Kylie? Let's skip over Kendall because Kendall's a cokehead and a lesbian. That's what I've always heard. I don't know. But she's just, I don't know. There's something weird about her. And it's like, I don't even have enough data to make an analysis on her. I still don't believe she's with that basketball player. I don't know. I'm just like, what are you talking? I don't know. Just talk. I can't even like give adjectives. There's just something like fishy there, whatever. You know what I have actually always heard? I've always heard this, that, and like we kind of run in similar circles. So there's a lot of people in common. So when I say I've heard something, it wasn't like on a message board. It's like I've heard things IRL, that when she was like 9 or 10 or something, she walked in on Bruce, because he was Bruce then, her dad, dressed up in lingerie, and it like fucked her up. like fucked her up in a big way to the point that she almost became kind of like asexual, you know? And I mean, we can't even begin to understand how that kind of thing would impact like an impressionable girl, like not even a child, but like a girl specifically. So she's got a lot of issues. Her narrative goes beyond just the typical. So we're just gonna go on with your proactive, Kendall. So yeah, Kylie. I said in my video about the Kylie Jordan thing, like I feel sorry for Kylie because her world is the smallest. You know, like Kim, Kourtney, Khloe, they were more like fully formed people before fame hit. And they had friends, like they went to college, they went to high school. Well, Kourtney went to college, but like, you know, they were normal. They were socialized normally. They had normal social connections. Kylie and Kendall didn't. Like they really didn't have the chance to make a lot of friends. And even if you watch Life of Kylie, like she says over and over again how she doesn't have any friends. She has Jordan, well, had, and then like people she paid, like her glam squad, and then her sisters. Like that's kind of it. And the thing is, like when you're at that level of fame, you don't make new friends. And I said in the video, it's like why Kim would keep Jonathan Cheban around because he's such a sponge. But it's like she knows him and she can predict his motives. You know, he's more predictable than like a brand new friend who knows who this person is, who knows what they want, who knows what they're gonna leak. Can they be trusted? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, just look at what Kylie's dealing with Jordan. She's known her since she was a kid, thought she could trust her. Look at this. And I feel sorry for Kylie because like, yeah, she loses Jordan. It's like, that's her entire social circle. Imagine your whole social circle being wiped out with one bad decision. It wasn't even your decision. Like, it's never too cold for an iced cappuccino. Never. So Kylie, the dudes she chooses, again, there are so many hot, crazy people out there, hot cheaters, hot douchebags. How do you keep finding the ones that aren't? Travis 100% cheats on her. Like I have heard this from many, many, many people who have had like eyes on it, you know, but the industry that I'm in, I've run a national gossip magazine for several years and I'm moving out of that though, which is exciting. So it's like, we're all used to seeing celebrities. No one's like, oh my gosh, it's a famous person. So it's like, we're very much kind of like on the inside, sort of. And we see a lot of things that never make it to the public, never make it to print, never make it to air. Sometimes it's because it's literally like too weird, people wouldn't believe it. And other times it's just like a favor, you know, it's a privacy thing, whatever. But point is, Travis is not faithful. Oh, wait a minute. An internationally famous rapper isn't faithful? A basketball player isn't faithful? Oh, like this isn't a racial indictment, by the way. This is an options indictment. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, a man is only as faithful as his options. Basketball players and rappers, and really anyone who travels has a lot of options to be naughty. Anyone who is famous and travels. Come on. A lot of options, and very few people aren't going to take advantage of those options if there is ostensibly no consequences. And you look at Khloe and Tristan, and it's like, yeah, what was the consequence there, Khloe? What exactly did you do to him when he was cheating on you when you were going into labor? And by the way, never stopped cheating on you and never was faithful to you even prior to that. So like, what was this big, like, I showed him. You still slept with him. So that's all the reinforcement he needed to keep doing what he's doing. And like all crimes, I said this in the other video, they escalate. And it's not really surprising that eventually when guys fuck around, they fuck around at first and then they fuck smaller and they fuck small and they fuck real close to home. Because if there's no consequences, they get lazy and they get bold. And then they hook up with Jordan Woods. So Kylie, sorry, I keep getting off track. There's so much to say about like this endless Kardashian romance garbage fire. Kylie's dating choices make perfect sense to me when you look at her narrative of the insecure teenager. She was stuck there. I've said in other videos that fame is a kind of trauma, and trauma arrests you developmentally at the age when it happens. If you look at Justin Bieber, he became famous when he was like 15, 14. When you look at his behavior, kind of like, yeah, he's sort of still like a 15-year-old, kind of like this little Bart Simpson, you know? So I lost my father when I was 22. I'm very much stuck in that age. Like I am. I date guys who are that age because I emotionally feel comfortable there. It's an itch that's scratched that I like. So Kylie, I mean, she became famous when she was a teenager, and she never had the chance to become what I've referred to as a warm-blooded animal. So a cold-blooded animal, like a snake, as we know, can't regulate its own core temperature. It needs to get it from the environment. Warm-blooded animal, like a person, comes from within. So we don't have to draw things from our outside environment. Kylie's a cold-blooded animal because her self-esteem comes from the outside. She said before, like if she posts a picture and doesn't get enough like positive comments, she deletes it and reposts it until it does. That's a pretty good sign someone can't regulate their own core of self-esteem, you know? And we develop that regulation through, hard knocks, growing pains. When we don't like ourselves, we're like, all right, I'm going to learn to like myself. I'm going to surround myself with people who build me up and point out the things that are lovable about me. Or people make the opposite decision. They're like, I'm going to be around people who validate how shitty I feel about myself. And that is a fork in the road that we have to come to not just once, but many times in our life. Because when we feel bad about ourselves, we can gravitate towards something bad that like scratches that negative itch. Or we can be like, no, I'm going to call my friend. I'm going to talk with my sister. I'm going to build myself up. I'm going to go to church, listen to a podcast, whatever it is. And Kylie never got the chance to make that decision in a way because her insecurities was, as so many teenagers are, were physical, comparing yourself to your insanely glamorous sisters and just like all your probably glamorous friends, everyone else, and just looking in the mirror and thinking, I wish I looked different. So instead of developing those tools to build herself up and be like, you know what, fuck you guys, I'm great. And having a family that encouraged her to do that, she had a family that was like, well, just get your lips done. Just get cheek implants. Get a brow lift. Do this. Get your boobs done. Get liposuction. Get a Brazilian butt lift. Because she's got all of those things done. And it's like, you can't fix an internal solution. An internal problem with an external solution. You can't fix the outside and think it's going to come, absorb into the inside. Fillers only go so deep. They don't fill up your soul. Believe me, people have tried and they look bizarre. So because of that, she can make as much money as she wants. She can be as beautiful as she wants. She can have as many followers. But there's always going to be that itch that makes her susceptible to someone who is either positively or negatively validating her narrative. And guys like Tyga and Travis Scott, they know how to work women. They look stupid. I think they look kind of like simple, like just like a half open slack jaw kind of thing. I don't get it. So many hot dudes out there. I don't get it. But they know how to work a girl like Kylie. They're not dumb. I've hung out with Tyga before. I actually like his music. He's like a pretty good lyricist, but it's like, I remember one of his friends was like, T, like you can't just eat Cool Ranch Doritos in place of brushing your teeth. And he's like, no, but it's like, they're like cool, like toothpaste is cool. And they're like, no, that is not the same. You have to brush your teeth. Cool Ranch Doritos are not toothpaste. He's like, and he was dating Kylie. Like this was not like he wasn't 7 years old. So Kylie is very susceptible to what I call, like captain of the football thing, like the prom king, the slick guy, the player, the fuckboy, the guy who's going to say exactly what he needs to and fill in all those little holes. You're so beautiful. I love you so much, blah, blah, blah. And the fucked up thing is like, of course she's beautiful. She was beautiful before she had all this surgery. Like she was a perfectly beautiful, perfectly fine, adorable young woman. Like she didn't need anything. But it's like she's desperate for that validation. So when a guy comes along who's going to give it to her, hook, line, and sinker. And she's going to be real blind to how he's actually behaving. Who does that sound like? Khloe. And who does Kylie always say was kind of like her mom figure because Kris Jenner wasn't? Khloe. So consciously or not, I believe Kylie sort of modeled her behavior and her narrative off of Khloe's, because it's a fact that a young girl's body image will be most directly affected by how her mother thinks about her own body. So if her mom is always like, oh, I'm fat, look at me, oh, I just need to stop eating. that is exactly how the little girl is going to feel for the rest of her life. I mean, this is true. So in some sense, Kylie imprinted on Khloe in that way, at least in this category. And who are the two that have done a lot of stuff to their body? Well, you know what, at this point, it's kind of all of them. So can't really draw that comparison there. But yeah, when you start to look at things like that, it's really interesting. And again, you realize like, oh, these relationships are obviously toxic and they're toxic from all of our points of view, but this is why it's happening. And so we have a responsibility to be like, okay, now we're woke about this kind of stuff. Let me look at my own life through this filter. And what am I doing? I want to be a Kardashian in a lot of different categories, but not this one, you know? So ask your friends, ask your family, ask your exes. Be like, what dynamic did you see at play between us? You know, was I constantly the martyr and I do everything around here? And it's not, you have to be careful because like the thing about narratives is that they're not false. If you have a victim mentality, you probably, you probably have evidence to support that. My like power thing, like I need power. Like I felt very powerless as a child. So it's like, I'm going to take all the power I can, like there's reasons for it. Your psyche didn't just come up with this out of thin air. It's rooted in something, but that doesn't mean you have to be a slave to it. Even becoming aware that this is your pattern and this is your narrative and your personal mythology really helps to ease those knots. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And acknowledging it it's not just the first step, it's the bulk of the steps. It really makes such a difference. So don't be afraid to dig into this. Like a lot of times we think if we dig into a psychological issue, it's like this black hole of despair that we're going to fall into and never come out. Like we'll start to cry and we'll never stop. We'll just drown in our own tears. And that's not true. It's like pulling out a splinter. You can deal with it if it just burrows in there. It's annoying, but it's not catastrophic. You're like, I can't just get it out. I'm going to have to chop my whole arm off. But once you get it out, it's like, it's real painful for a minute, but then you start to heal. And then you move forward and you're better off, right? That's what our life's work is. That is what being a conscious human is like. That's our purpose here, is to dig into those emotional splinters, route them out, and go forward and live a healthier life. I hope you guys have liked this video. If you do, click like and subscribe. Leave a gushing comment about how gorgeous I am and so much you like my bangs, even though I'm feeling a little whateverish about them. And find me on social media at ShallonXO on Insta, Twitter, and Snap. And like I said, if you have a love question of your own, find me on the Instant Go app at ShallonXO and click chat to be connected right away. And we'll talk. Bye, guys. Hope to keep up.